fellows, and youth representatives. It is my great honor and privilege to be welcoming you all to the KAICIID G20 Interfaith Fellows and Youth Forum. My name is Razan Farhan Al-Aqil, a Saudi youth representative and a member of the Salam for Cultural Communication organization, and I'm honored to be the co-master of ceremony of our forum today. My colleague Zaka, the co-master for our ceremony today.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I am Reverend Dr. Zaka Apuche Peter from Nigeria, the co-MC with Razan, the founder and the executive director of Zaka Center for the Promotion of Peace and Dialogue Foundation. I want to welcome you all to this forum. Thank you so much. Over to you, Razan.
Thank you, Zaka. Now it is my honor to be welcoming our very first speaker, His Excellency, Mr. Faisal Bin Muaammar, Secretary General of the King Abdullah bin Abdul Aziz International Center for Interreligious and Intercultural Dialogue, KAICIID. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you, Razan. Thank you to all of you. I would like to welcome His Excellency, our dear friend, Mr. Moratinos, and Ms. Jemima, and also Professor Catherine Marshall, who will share with me the start of this very important event. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, friends from around the world, it is my pleasure to welcome you all to G20 Interfaith Fellows and Youth Forum. This is a very special event for three reasons. First of all, it brings together KAICIID's fellows from around the world. I have often said that our fellows are our true ambassadors of dialogue. The 250 women and men who call themselves KAICIID fellows represent the very best of interreligious dialogue and represent the change we want to see in the world. Second, we benefit from the participation of a large number of young people from around the world. We are glad to have you here with us today. And the third reason is that we are gathered here today with a very important goal. Our goal is to bring the voices of our fellows and youth to the ears of the world leaders meeting at the G20 summit. The goal of the G20 Interfaith Forum is to ensure that religious voices are as diverse as possible, are represented and included in policy making. That interreligious dialogue is recognized as a tool for building peace and prosperous societies. The journey to the G20 Interfaith Forum began this year in July with a series of 6 regional meetings, bringing together over 500 participants. The journey will culminate in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, in the next week in a global interfaith forum where the lessons of the regional meetings and this one will be presented to the G20. I would like to welcome in particular our 5 keynote speakers today. They represent 5 organizations who have been instrumental in making this meeting a reality. KAICIID is proud to partner with each one of them. His Excellency, my dear friend and brother Miguel Moratinos, is a High Representative for the United Nations Alliance of Civilization, along with co-organizing the G20 Interfaith Forum. UN Alliance of Civilizations and KAICIID are also working together on enriching our prospective fellows programs through exchange programs and online training. Ms. Jemima Nartey, Vice Chair of the World Scout Committee, thank you for joining us and for all you do with the Scouts, building this movement of young people who are spreading dialogue and peace throughout the world. Professor Catherine Marshall from Berkeley Center at Georgetown University has been a driving force with the G20 Interfaith Forum for many years. Now, and has contributed through this and many other platforms to a growing awareness of the importance of religious voices at policy tables around the world. As you know, my home country, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, is a founding member of KAICIID and organizing this G20 Interfaith Forum in Riyadh is a particular privilege for me as a fulfillment of KAICIID's mandate and Saudi Arabia commitment to inter-religious dialogue and religious perspectives. I was personally looking forward to hosting you all in my home country for the G20 Interfaith Forum. But the hidden enemy, the pandemic, has ensured that our discussion must now take place, unfortunately, online. To our fellows and our young people joining us today, I will say this: you have the misfortune to live in very difficult times. COVID-19 is reshaping our world, and your generation will unfortunately bear the brunt of the decisions made by the world leader in dealing with pandemic, climate change, natural disaster, hate speeches, conflict, and inequality are all on the rise. Half the world's population is under the age of 30. You are the leaders of tomorrow, and the world is yours. I invite you to use this opportunity. I invite you to use this opportunity to speak honestly, to think deeply and wisely about the challenges we are all facing, and to tell world leaders clearly that you want them to do, and to tell the world leader what you hope them to do. Many of you are already working on finding solutions to these challenges. And we invite you to bring your perspectives to the international community and policy actors. I would like to thank you all for your commitment on this process. I wish you a fruitful discussion today and look forward to seeing you all at the G20 Interfaith Forum from 13th to 17th of October. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, that was the voice of the KAICIID Secretary General, His Excellency Faisal Bin Muaammar. Thank you so much, Your Excellency, for that wonderful speech. Next on the line, ladies and gentlemen, is the next presenter, who is no other person but the United Nations High Representative for the Alliance of Civilization. He is His Excellency Miguel Moratinos. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, please make welcome His Excellency Moratinos. Your Excellency, you have the floor, please.
Well, thank you very much to all of you. Let me first, of course, welcome all the youth coming from all around the world. I think I was told there's around 200 people gathering together virtually, but trying to make a better world. And of course, welcoming and thanking my dear friend and, Faisal Bin Muaammar, KAICIID Secretary General. Between KAICIID and Alliance of Civilization, United Nations Alliance of Civilization, we have formed a strong team, a strong partnership, not only through friendship, but commitment, working together in a very, very important issue in today's world, that is intercultural and interreligious dialogue. And of course, let me also thank the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for having hosted us for this special and very important event. I think in the way we are preparing this extraordinary historical G20, never I think G20 have assumed the responsibility to conduct the world affairs in this crossroad that COVID-19 has put to us. And in this reflection and what are going to be decided by the leaders, I think what is better than to start, our work with the youth. And starting with the youth is the curtain raiser event before we will have a G20 Interfaith Forum next week, where we will already prepare some consideration and recommendation to the G20 leaders that are going to gather, I think, in November in Riyadh, virtually or not virtually, but I think the important thing that they will receive not only the voice, but the proposal and the conclusion of the G20 Interfaith Forum. So today we are with the youth. We are with young women and men that are trying to figure out what is going to be their future. Last week, during the ministerial meeting of the General Assembly, UNOSC organized, I think, a very interesting experience. We have what we call an intergenerational conversation between UNOSC youth alumni, while you are today, the majority of you are KAICIID alumni. I think that's one project that we have to develop together, putting together, and making happen that the KAICIID fellowship and the UNOSC fellowship could, exchange point of view, how they are working in this same field. But last week, as I was telling you, we have this experience in New York, having the senior official of the UN entities discussing and listening of the aspiration and the frustration of the youth in order to conclude with certain recommendation for what is going to be a new, I think, a chapter of multilateralism, where youth have to have their own place. We had 4 major clusters in the agenda. The number one was youth, peace, and security. I think is essential. You will not have peace and security without taking into account the youth point of view. We had, of course, challenges for the youth, and my brother Faisal has mentioned today, as in introductory remark, that what has been the situation and what is the situation for youth in front of COVID-19. We had another cluster about hate speech and xenophobia and how youth can contribute to eradicate this kind of behavior. And we have, of course, how to prevent violent extremism. I think the meeting concludes very successfully with certain recommendations. I will come back later on to have and share with you how we can work together in the future. So we have this space to really interact, and it was coinciding with the 75th anniversary of the United Nations, and when the Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, launched this global conversation, mainly with youth, in order to get the stock of what the youth are expecting from us. And I think it is absolutely essential. UNOSC, United Nations Alliance of Civilization, since our inception, recognized youth as one of the pillars of the alliance. We have worked with them and for them. I think we have what I said, a prevention dimension. I think youth has been one of the areas where we can really make through education, capacity building, training, and different instruments that we provide equipment for the new generation to challenge and to really respond to the challenge of today's world. We are trying to empower young men and young women and the youth-led civil society and recognize them as a power agent for social change. And I think we have over the years developed a lot of program and project in order that we put together young people coming from different cultures, religions, and demonstrating that they can respect each other, that they can talk to each other, that they can work together, and that they can create what we call one humanity. So we had some programs. Most probably, most of you have entered in a web page. The first and I think most known program is the called Youth Solidarity Fund. It's a program that put together the youth and that they tell them how they should really respond to the different problems and challenges of today's world. At the same time, we have now today this COVID-19, and I think, as I told you, my brother Faisal has already mentioned. It is true. It's a tremendous burden. It's a tremendous challenge for everybody, but particularly to the youth. The pandemic further exacerbates those challenges that you, young women and men, have to confront. There were millions lost their job, and hundreds of thousands remain without education, yes, in order really because due to the partial closure of the schools and universities. There was a failure to address those challenges and led to alienating young people and eroding their trust in the political establishment. So that's environment is extremely dangerous, because if you don't have a school, you don't have a university, you have a family that have a tremendous problem, is really the best basis for radicalization, to get the youth anger and despair, and to transform this despair into hatred and radicalization. So extremists and radical groups are taking and can take advantage of the proliferation of this digital platform to double down on social media, spreading hatred and offering youth a twisted sense of purpose based on lies. But on the other coin of the money, on the side of the coin, we have seen how during pandemic, young people had also been in front lines, volunteering and providing support for their community. They found ways to engage, demand change, and fight for peace, inclusion, and justice. So we were heartened to see how UNOSC Youth Alumni engaging with vulnerable communities, providing healing hands, advocating harmony and reconciliation. They stepped up using traditional new technology to assist in peace building and advancing intercultural, interreligious dialogue. And I'm certain that you too have inspiring story to share with us. So we know that our work is far from being done. We have to continue to amplify the voices of young people like of you. And you can be sure that KAICIID and UNOSC, we were all committed to continue working with you and for you with the conviction that we have to build a better tomorrow. And that better tomorrow is what I want really to underline in my final words to you. There is a strong, let's say, growing tendency about pessimism. It is true that your world that you have to face is extremely complex, that many voices say that our sons are going to live a world than ourselves. That is unacceptable. So you should not really consider that the time is over. On the contrary, you will have a better world. You can have a better world. You deserve a better world. We have this, a sentence that is now common in our speeches. No, we have to work for a world where no one has to be left behind. But we, the senior people, the people who have now responsibility, like my brother Mohammed and myself, we should also work in order that we will leave to you a world that can be better than the one we are now presenting to you. And in this new shaping after COVID-19, the work and the engagement, and not the voice only, but the participation of the youth is absolutely fundamental. So I was telling you what were the conclusion of our work in last week in New York, when we have this intergenerational dialogue between senior manager of the UN entities and the youth alumni. And there was 4 elements that are absolutely, from my point of view, essential. Number 1, you have to establish some coordination mechanism. There is a lot of organization, there is a lot of NGO, there is a lot of platform, but you have yourself a youth to integrate and to really, you are, we can call them, you are the society of networks. So better than you, nobody knows how to networking. During my time, a young student, I didn't know how to networking. I have to read, to pass the exam, and then to become a professional. You are networking all the day, from the 8 in the morning till 10 at night, you are networking. So please try to find a way to coordinate your action. Number 2, you need a skill. I mean, that is very important to reinforce and to improve your capacity. I mean, I'm getting old myself, but I've been learning every year more, trying to learn and to be curious about the world and the complexity of our world. So you don't know everything. Even if you have a Google and you can have a Wikipedia and you can just press a button and then you have the information. That is not knowledge. That is some information. It's not knowledge. So you need still to reinforce your capability. You have to study, you have to be trained, you have to really learn better, because the future of your society depends on the capacity of having a better understanding of the world today. And then thirdly, you need really to claim not only that your voice is heard, but you need really to participate in what is going to be the new future. So participation is essential. I have a good news for you, because yesterday we have a meeting with Secretary General in order to prepare what is going to be the future common agenda of the UN, in order to really prepare a better multilateral architecture for the future. And of course, one conclusion was that we have, in order to prepare a report, that the youth have to be participating in this debate, in this work, because you are the one who are going to benefit of this new architecture. We are going to be the one who will decide what kind of multilateralism, how you are going to reform the structure, how you are going to really be able to really respond to the challenge of today. And finally, well, you need resources. You need resources to organize yourself. I think there is a lot of meaningful and creative way to really facilitate your work and your action. And I think, I'm sure that KAICIID and UNOSC will be behind you. So, my dear friend, that is the call that I want to tell you. I think in this Interfaith dialogue, we are meeting with different young colleagues coming from different cultures, different religions, and it's the blessing of our life. I think if you read the recent encyclic of His Holiness Pope Francis about Fratelli Tutti, you will see how we can respect each other, being a Muslim, Christian, or Jewish, or any other Hinduist or Taoist, and at the same time having the respect and the love for the other. Love for your neighbor, love for, the way you are working together, and I think we will succeed. So thank you very much for having given me this opportunity to address to you. I'm sure you are going to have very, I would say, interesting and enlightening discussion. And I hope that next time we can meet in person, because when you talk in person, when you see how people react, how they express their anger, or they express their joy, or they express their feelings, is the way we are still human beings and belonging to this one humanity that we have to preserve and to conduct. So thank you very much, and thank you, my dear Faisal, for inviting me to participate in this meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. MCs, allow me to say something for our brother, because it's really, I am deeply touched by your speech and your message to the youth. And we always, learn a lot from you, Your Excellency, your wisdom, your knowledge. You are one of the leaders of in the diplomatic field, and you are leading one of the most important organizations in the world. So I deeply appreciate your presence with us, and the way you talk to the youth from your heart. It's really a message from the heart to our 200 participants. So we are all grateful to your presence with us. Thank you very much.
Shukran. Shukran.
Thank you very much, Your Excellencies. It is now my pleasure to introduce Ms. Jemima Nartey, Vice Chairperson of World Scout Committee. Ms. Nartey, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Your Excellencies, colleagues, friends, and young people, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you find yourself at this moment. As said, my name is Jemima Nartey, and I'm the Vice Chairperson of the World Organization of Scouts Movement. Professionally, I'm an educator, and so I work with young people with diverse backgrounds in both fields as a volunteer and as a professional. I must say that I feel very honored and grateful for this opportunity to be one of the keynote speakers, especially for such an esteemed audience of high-level dignitaries, professionals, volunteers, and young people, all of various backgrounds of faith, religions, and cultures. I bring you greetings from Accra, Ghana, West Africa. My duty is basically to speak and hopefully set the tone together with other speakers for today's event. We live in a global village, and perhaps now could be aptly described as a global cottage. Thanks to the power of the internet, making communication and socialization close-knitted ever than before, especially in these COVID times. Unfortunately, this also brings with it a specific global danger: online hate speeches. This is taking place generally on social media networks such as WhatsApp, Facebook, Twitter, especially because of their popularity among people, but more especially among young people. These are unfortunately being used purposely to attack persons or groups on basis of attributes such as race, religion, ethnic origin, sexual orientation, disability, gender, and others. Suffice it to say, we have a situation on our hands, an albatross around our necks, which, if not worked on, will remain a monster in the digital space and be with us forever. Hate speech has become a powerful tool in spreading misinformation, inciting violence, discrimination, and dehumanizing minorities. Hate speech has resulted in after elections violence in the extreme cases, or hatred and break in families' relationships. Its negative impact is so wide and destructive. of the world's population communicate. According to the Digital 2020 Global Overview Report, more than 4.5 billion people now use the internet, while social media users have passed the 3.8 billion mark. This is made up of various sectors of society: young people, professionals, old schoolmates, associations, friends, families, who find social media convenient and swift to communicate information. Could we then say that with the convenience, swiftness, and the reach, this opportunity could also be used to positively counteract the negatives with positive actions? The situation may look bleak and worrying, but it is surmountable. Tackling hate speech is a responsibility for all: governments, societies, civil organizations, private sector, educational institutions, faith organizations, voluntary organizations, but most especially young people. Almost every continent in the world has its fair share of this challenge. Coming down home to my own country, Ghana, as an example, we are in a heated political season with a few more days to the presidential and parliamentary elections. With social media as the surest way of reaching out to the electorate, campaigns put out come in various forms. Unfortunately, some are rumors meant to pitch politicians against each other and to incite electorates. Hate speeches in these situations are not left out. There are many more examples around the world, not only about politics, but against ethnic groups, gender, religion, and other factors. Unfortunately, these end up as huge challenges disrupting the peace and stability of countries, not to speak of hate speeches against individuals, resulting in insecurity, loss of self-confidence, and sometimes suicide in the extreme case, especially if it has to do with young people. Fortunately, KAICIID G20 Interfaith Fellows and Youth Forum allows the space for intellectual discourse, conversations, and dialogue among young people and intellectuals to find possible ways to curb this unfortunate reality. We have a collective responsibility to address this situation. We must stand together, recognize, reject, and stand up to hate speeches using dialogue and peace education. Silence, just as inactions, may be perceived as either endorsement, anger, or intolerance. There should be no room for such situations to escalate or to allow the victimization of minorities. We all have a duty to tackle hate speech through structured, organized, and collaborative efforts, as will happen during your discussions. My dear friends, colleagues, young people especially, this is an unfortunate reality of the internet. I describe it as a chameleon that changes its colors according to the surroundings it finds itself. That surrounding is whoever is behind the keyboard. If hate speeches are typed, it transfers into that and carries that information. If words of truth, peace, harmony, encouragement are typed, those transform, it also transforms into these colors and sends as well. It respects the instructions of the user and gives results as instructed. Think about it. Are words messages of joy, encouragement, prayer, harmony, knowledge, and unity? Are they impactful words or simply negative ones? Make a conscious effort every day to send positive information. Write it, speak it, encourage it, discuss it, make a better impact and affect positively all persons with you at home or beyond. Remember this statement: the internet never forgets. The information stays forever. We in WOSOM, or as Scouts, have been involved in peace education for Scouts for over 100 years through our unique Scout program. This program trains young people to handle conflicts, respecting other views, respecting others from diverse backgrounds, and working together. Over 54 million Scouts from 171 national organizations in 223 countries around the world are working together. Many cultures, many languages, and different faiths, but simply Scouts working together. our flagship program, Messengers of Peace, and our collaboration with KAICIID, working on dialogue and peace education, paves ways and strengthens Scouts and non-Scouts to positively impact other young people in the fight against hate speech, especially on social media. Training young people on safety online. Our Safe from Harm program sets actions designed to make sure that every person involved in Scouting and beyond is responsible and committed to protect young people inside or outside the movement. So everyone is safe at any time. Keeping everyone safe is a must. Today, you are all gathered here through, though distantly, but thanks to the internet, virtually we are close. And the beauty of it is the diversity of participants, all geared towards a common goal. The diversity in faith, national languages, gender, color, and yet coming together to achieve a common goal of peace, harmony, and unity. As you go through your discussions in your working groups, think and focus on these. Relationships among individuals and citizens, listening to others and empathizing with them, embracing change through values of respect and harmony, and using the internet, the social media space positively. Remember, you are stronger and unconquered together. Continue to impact the world by posting the need for unity through celebration of diversity, dialogue, and peace education. Remember, either as volunteers or dedicated staff, your hearts are not measured by its size, but by the depth of commitment to make a difference in the lives of others, working together to bring peace, unity, and harmony in the world. And I leave this with you. Always remember this, you make a difference. Thank you very much.
Well, allow me again to thank Jemima for this. It's really very nice. I would like to thank you and thank Mr. Ahmed Al-Handawi for giving us the chance to partner with you. We started 5 years ago. We work closely in two missions, whatever KAICIID is doing, a messenger of peace. And our hope is that 60 or 55 million scouts, as we say, will be ambassadors of interreligious and intercultural dialogue ambassadors. This is really one of our objectives. And thank you for sharing with us your thought and your knowledge, and also the support we have always from the scouts all over the world. Deeply appreciated. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Please permit me to join the Secretary General to appreciate you, Jemima Nartey, for that wonderful and thought-provoking and timely message. I will pray that it will go down well with every one of us. In transiting to learn more about the G20I, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, please permit me to allow my co-MC to introduce the session and also the next speaker. Razan, please.
Thank you, Zaka. Thank you, Your Excellencies and distinguished representatives. As fellows and youth, your insights and participation with us today are truly valuable. Now allow me to transition into our second segment of this section of our forum today. This event belongs to a number of pre-events leading up to the G20 Interfaith Forum. This pre-event series was kicked off by regional meetings that have been taking place the last couple of weeks all around the globe. Today, the fellows will vote on the recommendations they will present to the policymakers in the main G20 event, and the youth will kick off their recommendation process today. Now, allow me to introduce Professor Catherine Marshall, Senior Fellow of the World Faith Development Dialogue Center at Berkeley Center, Georgetown University. Professor Marshall, you have the floor to speak.
Thank you, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It really is a joy to see your faces on the screen, though I wish very much that we were together. I'm here today as a representative, the vice president actually, of the G20 Interfaith Association, which is a continuing body that is working very closely of this year, particularly with KAICIID, to prepare for the G20 Interfaiths Forum, which takes place next week. So my task today is, first of all, to talk a little bit about the G20. Why the G20? Why are we focused on the G20? Secondly, why faith? Third, which is pretty obvious, but why youth? And fourth, some of the key issues that are involved. There's a lot of discussion. I've actually been on a session already this morning about the multilateral system and some concerns about what needs to be done to reinforce the multilateral system. And clearly the UN agencies are the epitome, the apex of this system, but there are many other multilateral organizations. And the G7, G8, G20 processes have emerged, first of all, to deal with crises and some of the most urgent issues. And secondly, they recognize something that's very important in the discussion today, which is the personal involvement. And in this case, it is the personal involvement of leaders of the major countries in the world. So the G7, G8 process, which is, I think we could safely say, limping at this point, is very much designed to bring the most powerful nations, the leaders, in a very personal way together. And the G20, which emerged in 2008, has the very explicit responsibility for dealing with crises, economic crises, but increasingly broader crises. And that's the bottom line here, that there are all eyes on the G20 this year as a major player in trying to respond to the multiple crises and emergencies that we face in the world. So the G20 is very different from the United Nations. It has no permanent secretariat. The host country each year sets the agenda in cooperation. The G20 leaders themselves are to meet in November. Let's be very clear, that's right after the US election. So there will be a lot of uncertainty about some of the relationships of the leaders. But that doesn't change the fact that the G20 overall, with the ministerials, with the engagement groups, 8 formal engagement groups that exist, is seen as having as much responsibility as any other single body in today's world for helping us to deal at a global level, multilateral level, with the COVID crises, but under it, what all the crises that the COVID crisis has revealed. So that's the G20. So why faith? Now, there are engagement groups that have emerged over the years around the G20 process. But at this point, there is not a formal engagement group for the voices of what is seen as 84% of the world's population, the large share of the world's population that has a religious affiliation, but even more the organizations, the beliefs, the practices. So for a long time, starting really in St. Petersburg some years ago, there has been an effort every year to bring the voices of the religious communities into the policy arena. And starting in 2014, a G20 Interfaith Forum has met every year. And as you know, it will be meeting next week and you will be a major part of it. So the idea is not to replace other interreligious bodies or religious bodies, but to bring together the wisdom and the ideas of the many different interreligious networks that are working on each one of the world's problems. I would challenge anyone not only to look at the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, but the 167 targets and not to find a religious dimension in each one of them. So the G20 Interfaith Forum is working to bring the ideas, the wisdom together and to present them to the leaders of the G20, but perhaps even more to the religious bodies themselves. So that is the G20 Interfaith Forum, and our hope is that it will be recognized as a permanent and continuing part of the G20 process, looking forward to Italy next year, India the year after. So why youth? I don't think I need to say very much because the previous speakers have been brilliant and inspirational in reminding us that, as I have heard so often, youth are not the future, they are the present. That we need the ideas, the energy, the force of young people. The challenge is always figuring out good ways to bring their voices to the table, to make sure that they are not neglected. And many organizations have a tendency not to hear young people. So I think that the spirit of this meeting today and of the participation in the G20 is very much to bring those voices squarely and clearly into the complex processes, which brings me to my final point. And it is very much my sense that if we as people working on the G20 Interfaith Forum, this complex partnership, if we don't have substantive, practical, creative ideas to offer, we will not be heard. The idea that simply because we speak and are at the table, that is not enough. We know that it's important to be at the table. There's an old phrase that if you're not at the table, you end up on the menu. So having the voice is important, but having something to say is at least as important. And that's why a lot of effort has gone first into hearing in each region and on many topics, what are the key issues? What are the priority issues? And what do we think needs to be done about it? So clearly the COVID pandemic and the ways in which we all collectively and individually need to respond is front and center. And the hate speech, the coming issues around vaccine development and distribution are critical. The capacity to reach the people who are suffering the most, whether they are refugees, whether they are the disabled, whether they are the informal workers who have lost their jobs. There are so many issues on the COVID front that demand action and need to be highlighted. So we have done briefs on that, and I encourage you to look and to enrich the ideas of what religious communities can do more and what the G20 can do more. But underlying that are a host of other issues. We know the climate change issues are urgent and need action. We know inequality has been, any veil behind inequality has been stripped away by the COVID pandemic, and action on that is an absolutely vital point. The refugees, far too little is said about what's happening to the almost 80 million forced migrants who are living in very precarious, dangerous situations. So the host of issues before us is vitally important. And finally, I'm teaching a course now on the COVID crisis and very much looking at the history of pandemics. And we know very well that there are two sides of pandemics. One is that it brings out the sense of common destiny. We're in the same storm, at least, even if not in the same boat, that we know that there is a sense of solidarity. There is a common spirit. But we also know from history that there are real possibilities that conflicts and tensions will be accentuated because people are afraid. They're looking for someone to blame. So I think we have an enormous responsibility to keep a very close eye on conflicts and tensions and to find ways to bring peace in very meaningful ways. But even more, build back better is not good enough. We want to build back with all the creativity that we have. And I think that's one of the many places that we look to you for ideas for action. How do we have processes that look to the future, a better future, the potential that we have, but also possibilities that have not been imagined. There's a wonderful phrase that Robert Kennedy and others have used. You see things and you ask why. I dream things that never were, and I ask why not. So with that, I'll end. Thank you.
Professor Catherine, thank you very much. I would like to thank you on behalf of KAICIID. Honored to know you and to know Dr. Cole. We've been working together since 2017 when we met in Germany. We partnered with each other in this creating the Interfaith Forum, and I can say with no reservation, this is going to be this week and next week the largest alliance of interfaith in the world. You know, it's really one of the largest. This week, we are reaching with youth around 300 with participants, and next week, the registration so far is reaching more than 1,000. So I invite you all to join us. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, and best regard to Dr. Cole.
And that was the voice of Catherine Marshall, the professor, who just did what she knows how to do best. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, by way of setting the context and introducing us to the process and contextualization of policy recommendations, I would like to call on Professor Mohammed Abu-Nimer to give his remarks. Professor Mohammed Abu-Nimer is a senior advisor and interim program director at KAICIID, as well as the director of the Peace Building and Development Institute at the American University, Washington. He has conducted interreligious conflict resolution training and interfaith dialogue workshops for over 2 decades in conflict areas around the world, including Palestine, Israel, Egypt, Northern Ireland, the Philippines, and Sri Lanka. Join me, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, to welcome Professor Mohammed Abu-Nimer. Professor, please, you have the virtual stage.
Thank you, Zaka. Thank you for the generous introduction, and I will join my colleagues in welcoming everybody here in this meeting, and also delighted to be able to complement what all the previous speakers have emphasized, how important the voice of the youth and the voice of the fellows of KAICIID as well into this process. I really don't have a lot to, and I'm going to try to avoid repeating the same messages, so it's challenging. I'm going to focus about the next task that you are about to do, which is to work on those groups and sort out the different recommendation that you will have. And maybe just to say 3-4 points. The first one is, it is clear that we are doing this event with the G20 Interfaith after Catherine Marshall extensive explanation about that, because there is an issue of the communication, dialogue, connection between policymakers and religious institution and leader. There is a gap, and KAICIID mandate has been always to try and respond, connect those two sides or multiple sides as multi-stakeholder in one process. So we hope that you can bear that point in mind, that we are trying to establish a connection, a dialogue, a conversation, attention of the two sides, religious institutions as well as policymakers. And we're using dialogue in order to do that. The second one is really the issue of themes. So regardless if you go environment, women, youth, technology, hate speech, COVID-19, all these themes were mentioned before. In my view, the themes are important, but I think your voice as youth and fellows together, it's very important to identify your own themes and your own priorities. So please, in the next hour and a half or 2 hours of your work, try to identify beyond or consider the 3 major themes that the Saudi host government identify: environment, women, youth, and technology, and you have working group on that. Are these very relevant? Are there other relevant issues for you? The third point has to do with the language. From our experience in working with the G20 interfaith, as well in general, policymakers have their own language, and language I mean with narrative, with the framing. The way they deal with these issues is, in my view, very different from the language and narrative that's dealt with the faith-based institution and religious leaders. Those are 2 languages, 2 words that in many ways do not necessarily communicate or connect always. So you have to be careful, in my view, which language you choose to frame your recommendation. The policy language or the religion language, or somewhere in between, you try to communicate a message that both sides will really be able to look at it. And I am not only focusing on policymaker, I'm also suggesting that you also look at what can religious institution do, and what role in your reviews as youth they should be addressing. So you're not dealing with policymaker out of the global context only. I hope you will consider you dealing with it from the religious institution context, especially those of you who are members and belong to religious institution. And many of you come to this table, to this space, because of your affiliation with certain religious denomination or religious group. So ask yourself, my religious institution, my religious affiliation, what does it have to contribute? How it can get to the place where it can do constructive and positive review. The 4th point or 5th point has to do with the existing mechanism. There are mechanisms around the world to engage youth globally and regionally: Europe, Asia, Africa, as well as globally the United Nations, African Union, European Union, OSCE, the Arab League, the OIC, the ASEAN. All of these are regional entities. So if it would be great if you think about in the recommendation, not only about the issues and what need to be done, but think about, are there enough mechanism for youth voice to be heard? Can you think of ways in which these mechanisms of communicating the message that exist can be improved, adjusted, or made more useful to the plight of youth? Not focus on the issue only, but on the representation and the mechanism to convey the message. And finally, it has to be concrete. We can't write in our recommendation, and we face that in some of the regional meetings. I want to do world peace. I want the G20 leaders to work on world peace without necessarily any concrete or any feasible. That does not necessarily, it's good, but that's not the language that will get to the attention of the policymaker. Catherine Marshall invited you to look at our briefings on the website. Please do that and get your input into that. Into these briefings as well. Put your remarks, and the process of forming them will be throughout the conference next week, as well as after the conference. We are preparing those portfolios to deliver to the representative in the G20 host country, who hopefully will be able to process and follow up with it with the G20 representative in Saudi Arabia in November. But the last word, to be creative and out of the box, and just put the ideas on the table regarding the issues that you have. And good luck, and look forward to read and see what you come up with. Thank you again for joining us.
Thank you very much. Professor Abu Nimr. And thank you, Your Excellencies and our distinguished representatives, for your valuable inputs. This convenes the end of our current section of the forum. All the way from Riyadh, we would like to share with you how honored we are to host this event, and we truly would wish that you are here with us in person. However, we are truly hopeful for the future, where you are always welcome here in Saudi, as we look forward to hosting you and welcoming you all into our home country. If we were together in person, we would take a picture together to mark this event. However, let us all gather from all of our countries all around the globe in our message of peace and understanding for a picture together. Please turn your cameras on for a family picture, as our colleague Caleb from KAICIID will take pictures over the next 30 seconds to the next minute. Caleb?
All right, everybody. Go ahead and turn on your cameras. I'm going to take a couple of pictures and try to get all of you all in one place. Thanks a lot for your patience. All right, looking good. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Caleb. Thank you all for being here with us. Now allow me to end by instructing you onto our next section of the forum. Fellows, please stay here in the plenary. Youth representatives, you will now be redirected to go into your assigned breakout rooms. Assalamu alaikum wassalam. Goodbye to you all.
To everyone, the breakout rooms will start in about 5 minutes. Just have a break and we will be locating you in the breakout rooms. Thank you.
Well done, Razan. It's a good job. Well done.
May I just take this opportunity to kindly ask anybody who has not renamed their first and last name, please to do so that we're able to assign you to the correct breakout room, or whether you need to stay in plenary as a fellow. This is very important, so I kindly ask you to change. If you do not know how to do that, kindly ask my colleague Baha or my other colleague Talina or myself, and you'll be glad.
Okay, everyone, the breakout rooms will start right now.
Baha, do we have all the youth assigned in their breakout rooms?
Yes, we tried our best to identify everyone, and we
Great.
assigned whoever is assigned to the rooms.
Great.
Okay?
Thank you very much, dear. Well, fellows, we are
one more thing, sorry, I'm going to let everyone now be able to share the screen and unmute themselves. Yes. Please make sure, everyone, that you mute yourself as long as you don't have any role to speak. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Baha. Please, ladies and gentlemen, make sure that you mute your microphones, since now all of you are able to mute and unmute yourselves. Now, in this part, we will start discussing our policy recommendations, the draft recommendations that were developed by our fellows starting from mid-September.
Female.
Before we start, I would like to thank, on behalf of the fellows team, all the 50 fellows who dedicated their time and efforts in the small working groups to identify the recommendations that will be shared shortly with all of us. So we had 5 working groups, 5 thematic working groups. The working group 1 worked on countering hate speech and the use of social media as a space for dialogue. The second group worked on addressing the needs of and advancing solutions. Pardon, I'm reading the wrong working group. The second group worked on fellows in front lines addressing disasters. The third group worked on fellows as educators and mobilizers for youth and women. The fourth group worked on the fellows as guardians for the planet. And the fifth group worked on fellows partnerships and commitments for religious and multi-faith partnerships, as well as rule of law and religious rights. So without further delay, I would like to invite the representative of the working group 1, fellows as ambassadors of peace building and conflict resolution, Zafer Nahas. Zafer, please, the floor is yours. You have 8 minutes to present your recommendations, after which I will ask my colleague Sarah to share a link in the chat box where you will have the chance to vote on the most important or top priority recommendations, the 3 top recommendations based on your own perspective. I will explain after the presentation, but for the time being, let's listen to Zafer. Zafer?
Thank you, Kifor. Thank you, everyone. Good morning, afternoon, and evening. This is the new hello in a post-COVID time. I hope everyone is okay. I had the honor to work with a diverse, fantastic group of KAICIID's fellows on conflict prevention and peace building to draft some kind of policy recommendations to you and then to the G20 leaders. The group I've worked with were well-informed, very much engaged and active, and here are the names of them. I will be speaking on behalf of them. Not to take so much time, I will be starting with a small sentence that one war hero in a country told us after 30 years of civil war. He said that the war did not start with the first bullet. The war has started with the first word. So we have been discussing in our group how hate speech is not only words and is an early stage of an early indicator of attacks or of violence. So for us, we had to work on 3 subtopics in the conflict prevention and peace building. The first one was hate speech. The second one was protection of sacred sites. and social media as well. The first things I want to say before I go to the recommendations, that we have discussed that things are not only interfaith and hate speech and social media, and peace building is not only merely between different faiths and religion, it is also among certain faiths and intra-faith. So it's not only different religions, it's different sects within one religion as well. Second point would be that we are advocating toward policies that are driven by evidence and outcome, not influenced by politics, although we were aware of how both of policies and politics are weaved in together. And the third one was that these recommendations apply for both during war and peace. So it's not merely to prevent, it's to prevent conflict and to be engaged in the peace building process. So regarding hate speech, the first thing was law enforcement taking legislations and laws to criminalize hate speech, not only as like acts of wording or expression. It is we're asking to be for it to be a crime, while balancing the need for free speech versus hateful rhetoric. There is a need for governments to implement zero tolerance laws against hate speech, and this goes into education as well, where institutions, religious and educational institutions of higher education and schools should work on two different levels. The first one would be reforming the higher education of university and adult education, as well as the primary and secondary school levels. We need to implement a multi-faith curriculum and diversity training to be made widely available. And this involves more religiously pursuing areas like digital channels and protecting against cyberbullying. The third recommendation regards hate speech would be not only tracking and tracing and criminalizing hate speech, but also addressing the root causes, which mostly would be ignorance and not knowing what the others are doing or not knowing the other. So the rise, we were talking about the rise in populism and extreme right and hate violence throughout Europe and the USA as an indicator that hate speech has deeper roots than just xenophobia. It is an increasing sense of injustice and inequalities is a root cause that need to be more openly explored and dialogued with. This was for hate speech. The second subtopic was social media. And our first recommendation was towards a universal declaration of ending proliferation of hate speech, that world governments must draft an agreement to define and outline hate speech and make it illegal, and to hold companies that provide platforms accountable morally and financially towards hate speech. And we've been discussing how they are able to do that. Techniques like track and trace, counter-reacting and deplatforming must be bolstered, and more support to staff and monitoring.
You have 3 minutes left, Zafir.
Thank you, Kifor. The second recommendation regards social media would be not only tracking and tracing and deleting hate speech, but also building on a counter narrative, working with civil society, NGO, non-governmental organizations, and faith-based organizations and other entities to promote counter narratives. You all have been familiar with what calls like a cyber flies. So we're asking, or we're suggesting cyber butterflies in terms of spreading, like spring rather than winter. Third point was the protection of sacred sites. And actually our group has expressed the need of physical protection, like having police and armed army protecting some synagogues, churches and mosques and different places of worship. But they also, or we have also expressed sadness that this is not the way that we want to express our or to practice our religion. So we acknowledge the need for this, and we ask for security enhancement by training and placing security guards at entrance of places of worship. And we're saying that this is against the ethos of religious place of worship, but it's sad reality for terror attacks against churches. The second and the last slide and recommendation of protection of sacred sites is not only, so we're moving from protecting practices or believers into addressing root causes like openness, transparency, and religious literacy. Many of our fellows have been engaged in open days and field visits, and we've been talking about how the fellowship experience with KAICIID has fed into this. Local cooperation and teaching about cultural heritage connected to religious sites may encourage more solidarity and support. Some countries have annual open days with the public that can visit houses of worship of many faiths and learn more about their worship and local activities. This would help people to be more familiar with the closed, protected buildings around them, to turn them into places of, the image of these places into, to make people aware of the importance and the richness of diversity that it brings to the local community. This would be all. Thank you, Kifor, for the time. I hope I'm not past the time, and thank you, my group, for working.
You are exactly on time, as you can see. Great. The alarm is on. Thank you very much, Zafar. Now, I will kindly ask my colleague, Sarah, to copy-paste the link of the poll where you will find all the recommendations that Zafar introduced. Please make sure to read them within 3 minutes and identify the top 3 recommendations based on your institution's needs and perspectives. So let me emphasize again, we have to identify top 3 recommendations to take with us into the main G20 Interfaith Forum. Sarah, could you please copy paste the link? And meanwhile, let's refrain from you writing in the chat box so the link doesn't disappear.
You are mute, keyboard.
Oh. I know. I was talking with Sarah.